In the last video we looked at the TBM 930 from the outside. Today we step inside the most advanced cockpit in its class. The Garmin G3000 isn't just a GPS, it's an integrated ecosystem. Many people feel overwhelmed by these touch screens, but once you understand the logic, you realize it's actually easier than your smartphone. Today we're going to wake up the aircraft and program a complete IFR flight from scratch. But before doing that, we first need to do a few steps. Else, we can't even touch the screens. As already mentioned, before controlling the aircraft using the Garmin G3000, we need to kind of bring the aircraft in a state where we can use the Garmin G3000, which means that we need to give it some power so we can control those nice touchscreens and also have a closer look at both the PFD, the primary flight display, as well as the MFD, the multifunctional display. Now there are multiple ways to start the aircraft and I would recommend you to follow the checklist. Now the nice thing of course is that Flight Simulator has a built-in checklist which you can use, which you can find in the EFB, right? If you press the EFB, there you can go to the aircraft icon and there you will find the checklist, and in the checklist section you will find the pre-flight but also the pre-flight inspection one as well as the inside inspection one. The pre-flight is more external, the inside inspection of course for internal, and the most important one is the before starting the engine, because that will give the aircraft some view from, I'd say, power perspective. Now this is the built-in checklist, but of course there's also the official checklist from TBM. And that one is a little bit more extensive. It contains more steps, also sometimes more detailed. So I would recommend you to have a look at that one also. The good news is that I post a link in the video which you can have a look at and then can decide which one you of course want to use. The nice one about the built-in of course is that you have that, I would say, eye icon, right? That eye icon will simply highlight the item where you need to click on. So if you're unfamiliar with the aircraft, that could also be a starting point, but it really is up to you. Again, the Garmin PDF link can be found in the description of this video, so choose wisely, I would say. So before we're getting started, let's do a quick inside tour of the cockpit. And I'm also going to learn you how to use the quick view camera positions. Shift 1, that's the one I press currently, is zooming on to the PFD, the primary flight display. If you press Shift 2, which I will do now, I will focus on the MFD and also the other control systems. If you press the Shift 2 again, you will zoom out to the original position. So pressing Shift 2 will zoom into the MFD. If you press it again, it will zoom out. Really handy. If you press Shift 3, you will focus on these nice instruments. These nice instruments will be discussed in a future video because they all have to do with the autopilot of the aircraft. If I press Shift 4, I will zoom out a bit and get an overview of both the PFD, MFD, autopilot, and also the DI system, which I'm pointing currently to. You can see the gears, you can see some other systems, as well as the air conditioning. Could be very handy, right? If it's very hot. If I press Shift 5, I will zoom on to the throttle quadrant, although it's not really a quadrant, but there's one throttle, there's the flaps, there's the adjustments, there's the trim wheels, and also there's the tank selector, right, to select left or right tank. Now the throttle is a little bit special because you can see that you can move it from left to right, which is, I would say, different compared to other aircrafts. And I will explain that during starting the aircraft and really going to taxi mode in the future video. Now if I press Shift 6, we will move to the top of the aircraft where you will see a lot of things. You can see the external lights, the internal lights, the electrical power, the engine start, the view, the APN trims and the ELT. All of them are important, of course, but we will focus on those individual ones in future videos. Mainly for this video, only the electrical power is something which we need to look at because that's what we need. Now if I press Shift 7, I will zoom out a bit, and then I've got certain, I would say, nice windows and some nice options, I should say, where I can trim the light. For example, I can adjust the brightness for the lighting, and there are also some things which are not working, as you can see. Now if I press Shift 8, I will zoom into the power plugs. Also really important, you can check them, but I didn't encounter any situation where they weren't, I would say, correct all. And if I press Shift 9, that will zoom to this nice side, which is the left side of the cockpit, is the door where the pilot is located. You can press the buttons, you can use the handle to open the door, and if you press Shift 0, you will move to the back. And on the back, you can open a passenger door, you can lock it, you can change the, let's say, temperature, etc. So pretty nice, a lot of options inside the cockpit of the TBM 930. And to reset the view, you can simply press Shift 9 again, which brings it back to this view, which is the cockpit view. So now it's time to really wake up the aircraft, right? The wake-up call. To do that, we're going to follow the checklist. I'm assuming that you completed the pre-flight and the inside inspection flight. And we're going to look at the say rest of the items, really focusing on the before starting the engine. You can see that the crash level needs to be up and the source selector needs to be set to either a battery or GPU. The GPU, right, it's a ground power unit which you can connect to the aircraft, and it could be really useful to use that one if you're, say, using the aircraft for the first time. And the reason I'm saying it is because the battery will drain. So where can you find that option? Well, you can move to the top, and there you can see that crash bar, which I can move up, and there you see nice two buttons, right? Those nice two buttons below the crash bar, those are the ones which we need, but especially the left one, because the left one, which I'm currently pointing at, allows you to either set it to say GPU, or you can set it to the battery. As soon as you switch it to battery, things will start to happen. What will happen? Well, of course, the Garmin will start to boot up and some other things will be done, right? Some pre-checks will be done by the aircraft automatically, and it will also inform you once those pre-checks have been completed. But again, be careful because the battery is draining, and if you drain it too much, you can't start the engines. So now I'm gonna show you some of these displays, right? Some of the displays are going to reset the view and then press Shift 1. This is the primary flight display, and as you can see, it shows you AHRS align keep wings level. So you shouldn't change anything. If I press Shift 3, I can move to the MFD, which shows me some interesting things. It shows me the system version and also the navigation database. And as you can see, this one is pretty, I would say, interesting because it has already expired. So normally you shouldn't say take off because the navigation database needs to be updated, because else it doesn't make sense to use it, right? It could contain some old navigation points, some old airways, some old other things, and that's really dangerous. So don't do this normally. I'm gonna now press the right button, which brings up the display, and then you will see this with a lot of things, right? We're gonna zoom into that one in a few seconds, and I'll explain you everything which you can see on the screen over here. So pretty interesting display, right? You can see the aircraft did wake up. We can see all the displays are now working. Also the touch displays on the bottom are working, which are used to control both the PFD and MFD. But we're gonna look at those individual functions in a few seconds. So the first display we're gonna have a closer look at is the primary flight display. It contains a lot of information. First of all, it contains the airspeed. The airspeed is super important, and it also contains the heading, and that's the heading where the heading knob is set to. So currently 360 degrees, because the aircraft is currently pointing to 103 degrees, so that's different. Then we can see the DTK, we can see the altitude, we can see the barometer settings, and also in this case our flight plan, which is already there. So you can already see some information about the flight plan. Don't worry, I'm going to reset it, so we will start from scratch in a few seconds. So that's what you can see over here, but you can also see a lot of other interesting things, right? For example, you can see the angle of attack. It's currently being displayed like this, but if you go airborne, it will look a little bit differently. And you see the no wind data. The no wind data simply means that you don't get any wind information. In addition to that, you see a lot of other nice things, such as the compass, but also the pointing pink arrow, which points to the navigation beacon. On the bottom, you've got several buttons, and those buttons can be used to, for example, change the map layout. You can set the inset map, which shows the map like this, which shows you the, say, surroundings. It shows you the direction, right, heading up, and it also shows you the location where you are and the flight direction where you need to go to. But in some case, you might not like this, and you might want to change it to a different position if you want. And that also can be done because then you can press the HSI map. That will replace the compass on the bottom and will show it like this. It really depends on what you prefer. You can also switch it to off, of course, or set it to inset map or set it to HSI map, depending on your preferences. So enough about this, right? Enough about those maps. Let's go one level back. Another level back, and then we can go to the traffic inset. The traffic inset shows you the aircraft which are close to you. Currently, the traffic avoidance system is on standby because we're on the ground, but as soon as we go airborne, it will wake up and will show you the aircraft which are, say, in a close area to you. And it's being used to also avoid that you would say will hit those aircrafts. You see the map range plus and minus on the bottom, right on the left side, which you can use to zoom in or zoom out to those settings. Besides that, we've got the PFD settings, and the PFD settings, let me switch off the other mode and then go to the PFD full mode again. Will give you some options like, for example, setting the synthetic terrain, which also enables the horizon. Synthetic terrain shows you the runway in this case, so kind of a virtual view, and the horizon heading shows the arrow which I am currently pointing at in the screen. So again, some people like this, some people don't like this. Again, set this to your preferred, let's say, setting, because everyone has its own preferences, I would say. I think both of them are pretty nice. And you can also disable them, right? Again, the horizon heading, just disabled and enabled it. And also the synthetic terrain can be switched off. And then if you are ready, you can set it to back. Besides that, you've got the PFD full mode, and the PFD full mode can show you the screen completely, or you can divide the screen up into two parts. Then you've got the, I would say, horizon there, and then you've got the navigation map on the right side. I don't like this mode, but it's really up to you. You can change the always to the full mode again if you want, but again, it's a personal preference. So you can find it under the PFD settings again, the PFD mode full. That's where you'll find this option. So nice option. Besides that, we've got the bearing 1 and bearing 2. Those will add additional needles to that compass. You can see bearing 1 is currently set to GPS, but I can also set it to ADF or to nav1. And if I would have set up a navigation beacon, it would point into that direction. So then I've got an additional needle, and I can do the same thing for bearing number 2, right? It's really up to you if you want to use the setting. In some cases, it could be handy. If I press the other settings, I can also change some other things. I can change, for example, the wind. Currently it's set to wind option number 3, but you can change it also to 1 and 2, or you can switch it off completely. The wind data will be available as soon as you go airborne. Currently it's not the case, so that's why you see no wind data, because it doesn't receive anything yet. Likely due to the weather radar not being switched on, but we will focus on that, say, in the next video, where we're gonna start the aircraft and really take off using this nice TBM 930. Going back once again, we can also change the angle of attack, right? That's the one I pointed at. You can also set it to off, then you don't see it. Either you can set it to auto, on or off. And the altitude settings, you can change the barometer settings either to IN or HPA, and you can change the altitude to meters. That will add an additional, I would say, label, which is the which shows you the meters, right? The meters in altitude compared to the other, let's say, normal values. I would say leave it on or off, really up to you. So pressing back again and again back. Then we find the other settings which we just discussed. So let's go one level back. And then we find the OBS, the omni-bearing channel. This is if you want to fly to a certain, I would say, navigation beacon into a certain direction, then you can press the OBS. And you can also change the active navigation mode, the lock 1, lock 2, etc. So both the OBS is more used for VORs. If you want to intercept at a specific, say, degree, you can do that. And the active nav allows you to change the navigation. Then we've got some other settings. We can change the ADC to ADC 1 and 2. I didn't find any, I would say, description of what it does, but if you find it, then let me know. And you can change the HRS number 1 and number 2. So these are likely a primary and backup system where you can make some changes to. So a lot of options already in this, I would say, primary flight display using the buttons on the bottom. So with that, I would say, I think we discussed enough about this PFD, didn't we? And the next display we're going to look at is the MFD. The MFD has the same buttons on the bottom, like the primary flight display, but contains a lot of other information. So on the left side, you will find everything related to the engine and to some temperatures, the oil pressure and the oil temperature, but also the gas messages. And the gas messages on the bottom are either red, which means there's an error, and yellow, there's a warning, right? So you need to keep an eye on them, because if there's, I would say, if those are visible, it means something. Then we've got the other things which are related to the battery. And the battery, you can see it's 24.2. For starting the aircraft, you need to be at 24.8 battery according to the official manual. And I will show you why in the next video, because weird things will happen if it's too low. So keep an eye on this one, because it's super important. Besides that, we've got the cabin pressure, right? The alt, and also the rate FPM, which means to say the climb or decrease rate of the aircraft. We can see the difference in PSI, but also important, the fuel quantity. And that's divided in both the left and the right tank. So currently 71 on both sides, but you will see that there will be some difference in the near future. Electrical systems, again, the amps and the volts, again, keep an eye on them. On the bottom part, we can see the trims, we can see the elevation, the rudder, and also the flaps. So you can control them. Make sure that in some cases, the manual says specifically that they need to be in the green area. So make sure that it's set there. And of course, the flaps, you need to make sure that it's set to take off if you're taking off. Then navigation display, which I'm already pointing out. That's where you can see all the nice things. And on the right side, you see the traffic map, which shows you the traffic which is close to you. So currently you can see it's divided in 2 screens, but you can make one of them larger, the full screen mode. Then on the top, we can see other interesting things like the ground speed, the DTK, the track, the ETE, right? The estimated time of arrival, and then the bearing, then the distance, and then the ETE in UTC and the landing UTC. The landing UTC is really used for, say, I would say, figuring out how late you're going to land, so you can inform your passenger about that. Again, the traffic map doesn't show anything right now because the TAS, the traffic avoidance system, was on standby. Now we're going to zoom into that bottom part of the screen, which allows you to control a lot of things. First of all, you've got those 3 buttons, the PFD, the MFD, and the NAVCOM. The PFD allows you to control some of the PFD settings, and the MFD allows you to control the MFD settings, and the NAVCOM allows you to control the navigation radios. So if you're focusing on the PFD, you can use it to send certain options. However, some of these options I already discussed, except this one. This is the speed box, and the speed box allows you to set up the speed box, which I'm pointing out as we speak, on the screen of the PFD. That one can't be configured on the PFD itself, but you can use that nice other system, which is the Garmin G530, if I'm correct, to control those options. And you can either set it to on, or you can set all to off. You can also, let's say, go back, right, if you're not happy with that, or press home. And back and home are simply the options to navigate to this complex, say, navigation structure. Besides that, we've got the timers, which you can use for VFR flights. So you can set up the timer settings, or maybe some other things. Really up to you. If you want to use it, you can start it, you can stop it, you can reset it. And if you're ready with it, you press simply the back option, and then you will go back to the previous menu. There you can find the bar minimums, and we will discuss it very soon. The traffic in map simply enables the traffic in map in the PFD, as already discussed. And then we've got the PFD map settings, which contains a lot of these options like the HI map, the inside map, the traffic inset. And then in some cases contains some more options where you can enable an option and then press the settings option to configure some additional settings. And the PFD settings, similar to the PFD settings on the PFD screen itself. so I'm not gonna discuss it any further. Although there are some options which might be nice for you to, I would say, kind of adjust the aircraft if you want to use them. But I'm not using it at all as we speak. But hey, that might be a personal preference. Then the second one is the MFD. And the MFD brings you to the installation screen if you start from scratch there, right? In this case, you can see that the flight plan is already programmed, but I will, I'd say, reset it so you can see it. If you move away from the installation screen, you can still go back to it. And that's by going to the utility screen, and they will find the installation, and that will bring you to this window. Now, if you want to reset the aircraft or reset the settings, reset the flight plan, you can press the reset installation, which resets both the flight plan as well as the weight and fuel settings. Because currently you can see that the flight plan already contains entries. So let's see what I can do, right, with that. So I'm going to press reset installation, which I'm pointing out now. It says, hey, I will clear the active flight plan, but also the weight data. Well, I'm fine with that. So press OK. And now I can start from scratch. And this is also where our journey starts to program the flight in the TBM 930, as well as the Garmin G3000, which is the computer inside the TBM 930, of course. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add an origin, and then we're going to add waypoints and then destinations. So what I already did in the EFB, I programmed the flight. So if I go to the route, you can see that it already has added some interesting things. So we're flying from LFBT, Lourdes, Purins, and we fly to Malaga, and I will scroll down as we speak. Oh, here we go. Yeah, Malaga, that's the one we're going to. That's our destination. You can see some procedures are already added there. That's mainly done by using the say flight planning option in Flight Simulator 2024. You can see the waypoints over here. You can see the en route waypoints. You can see the runway is already there. So let's see if we can program that. So we're going to move it, the EFB, a little bit aside so we can use this. So the first thing we're going to do again is add the origin. So we're going to add, in this case, LFBT, which shows the airport, and then I press simply enter. And if I press enter, it shows it here. I can select the runway. In this case, I'm going to select runway 2 because that's in the flight plan. And then I can continue with some other nice things, right? I could add a departure route, right? The SID, the Standard Instruments Departure Route, but I decided not to do it. Maybe in a future video. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add those en route waypoints. And that's a lot of work, but hey, it's fun to do, right? You will learn a lot from it. So I will press in the first one, Tivoli, right? Here we go, Tivoli. And then you will see it's in Spain, so that should be correct. So I'll press enter, and that has added it. But it didn't add, I would say, in this case, the altitude. It did add the bearing and the distance, but not the altitude. So if you press the altitude, you can add the altitude as shown on the flight plan. So 27800, and then press enter. Then you see this, it's okay. And that can be used by the VNAV option, right? The vertical navigation option in the simulator. Once that's done, I'm gonna add the next one by pressing add and route waypoint. I'm gonna go to the next one, which is Ronnie. You see it's still in Spain, so that's good. And I'm gonna change the options over here, 31000, and then say enter. It shows like this. I'm not sure what it does mean, to be honest. I need to figure it out, but I will let you know once I figure it out. There's a cross to the altitude. So next one is Yaksu. So we'll also do that. Yaksu, here we go. It still says Spain, and then I can press enter. So by the way, I'm showing you the option, right? You can also use the send option and then say send ATC and avionics. Then it will automatically send all the information to the flight plan. But it's more realistic to do it like this. So next one is Brito, also Spain. So we're going good, right? And simply adding the altitude. That's also maybe a question for you. If you know, do you need to add all the altitudes or only the ways where it's going to change it? Because in the procedures, it's automatically done. Then CGN. And here you find an interesting thing because it says duplicates found. So make sure that you select the correct one because one is in Australia, one is in Colombia, and the other one is in Spain. That's the one we need. Because if you select the incorrect one, well, you can already imagine what's going to happen. In that case, you might go to a completely different part of the world. The next one, Intex, let's also add it. Here we go, Spain, that's an easy one. Also add the altitude, yes. Before we're gonna continue with the next one, which is NASA's already. So you can see we're making progress. I didn't find a way to use the keyboard to type it in, but maybe if you found a way to do it, then let us know via the comment box below this video, because that could be very interesting to, let's say, to know. So 3100 again, and then we're going to go to Anzan, Alpha November Zulu, Alpha November. Here we go. Also adding the altitude in this case. And by the way, you can also change flight level or MSL, right? It really depends on what you prefer. Now we added all the waypoints. We of course need to add the destination. And destination, we can find it on the bottom of the flight plan. It's LEMG, Lima Echo Mike Golf. It's Malaga Airport. We're gonna press enter and then it's done. But there's more to do, right? We want to add those procedures. So how are we gonna add those procedures? Well, that's kind of easy, because on the left side of the display you will find the proc button. The proc button can be used to either set the departure, the arrival, or the approach. In this case we want to set the arrival, and then we only need to change it to the correct one. So currently it's set to BLN 1A, it needs to set to 1B. We don't need to set the transition, but we do need to set the runway 21, and then it's currently set. So it adds all those waypoints which are part of that procedure to your flight plan if I would press load now. But of course, in some case you want to preview it, so you can preview it. You can say show it on the map, and if I press that option, I need to zoom out and zoom in, you will see a preview of it on the MFD. So you can see this is the procedure which I'm flying to reach eventually runway 31 of Malaga Airport. So pretty nice and pretty useful. It contains all those entries, as you can see, multiple, let's say, navigation or nav aids. And then I can simply press load, and it will add it to my flight plan. So pretty cool. Now we added the arrival procedure for this airport. You can see it also has added all those altitudes. For some reason it, say, deviates a bit, because you can see BLN and OLA is kind of weird how it sets those altitudes, but maybe there's a valid reason for that. Now, next thing is we need to set the approach procedure. We're going to press the proc button again, press approach, and there we change it to the correct approach. In this case, ILS 31 Yankee, that's already set. And we set the transition to ROSIT because it's set in the flight plan. Now here comes that minimums off, right? Minimums off, that's that option which we already discussed prior in this video. So we need to set it correctly. And how can we figure out what's the correct value? Well, to do that, you need to get the chart of the airport. You can press it on the India icon, and there you will go to, in this case, what is it? Approach. Select the correct runway 31. ILS Yankee 31, that's the one we need, and then you will load the map. So there's a difference in the maps which are used in Flight Simulator depending on your provider. So if you're using Navigraph, then you're using the Jepson map, and if you're using, let's say, the default maps, you will use the Lufthansa maps. And the decision altitude is 1700 currently. So that's the decision altitude where you need to make the decision: am I going to land, or do I would say abort the landing? So I will need to deep dive into this kind of maps a little bit more in a future video, because the differences between those maps is really a lot, but eventually they will tell you exactly the same, right? It contains the same information in most cases. So for now, please accept it's 1700. That's the value which we need to put into that minimums of, and I will explain it in a future video a little bit more in detail how we're going to do that. But that's slightly separate series, even how to configure that or how to figure out that, right? So I'm going to move around 1700. Let's press the button. There we go, 1700, and then press, in this case, enter. And it will add the value. And in a future video, you will see why it's necessary to do that. Here again, you can set it to preview, which shows the preview on the map. And it's not on the chart, that's not available, but on the map you can see it. That's the flight plan or the procedure, which has now been added. There's one important thing in this case, that you need to press load and not load and activate, because if you press load and activate, it will activate the approach directly. In this case, we only want to load it. It will say, okay, not approved for GPS, well, fine for me. And then if I scroll down, we can see that it has added the approach in this case, and we should be kind of good to go. Now there's another thing, which is the pane, and the pane, you can see it's on the right top, and you can change it, and you can change it to go to the previous map. It does not always work like this, but this is how I figured out it works. So try that yourself. Using that small knob on the top, you can go back and forward easily. You could see now also that the flight map already has a green check mark, so pretty useful. But first, let's discuss some options for the flight plan. Because we can do some things, right? First of all, we can change the map settings, but we can also use the show on map. The show on map shows the full flight plan, but then on your MFD, right? The multifunctional display. However, as you can see, it's currently a little bit small. So I press the full icon, which shows me the flight plan now completely. Flight plan is now 100% on the screen. And if I want to change back, I press the half, and then I will be able to see both the flight plan as well as the traffic map. So it really depends on what you prefer. So there are a lot of options, as you can see. Some cases you can also need to use that right panel to control the right screen, right? The right, I would say the co-pilot panel, I would almost say, to control the screen. But for now, we're gonna leave it like this. Besides that, you can of course change the map settings, which I also discussed already. So you can enable certain options, you can go to the settings, but especially this one is interesting, because this one allows me to configure the map, right? So I can, for example, disable certain points. I can say I don't want to see the VORs, or I don't want to see the airspaces or airports. But besides that, I can press the settings option, which allows me to kind of reconfigure the airspaces, for example, or only show certain airports of a certain size. So that's pretty handy. And if I scroll down, you will find more options over here, including user waypoints, NDBs, interceptions, and the VORs, which are there for you. So really nice option. Then we've got other, which shows you the other option, which allows you to change drag factor and wind factor. I tried enabling them, but I didn't see that much difference, but it could be because we're still on the ground. So let's keep an eye on that in the near future to see if that changes, right? You can see nothing changes. If I press enable or disable, nothing happens here. Same thing is for the other one. So a lot of options, as you can see, which you can control, which allows you to kind of, I would say, make the airport or map look different. Here also the absolute setting, right, shows it. And then the traffic avoidance warning system in habit, you can enable it, you can disable it from here directly, which I would say warns you if certain, say, high buildings are there. Oh, was the wrong button, sorry. So going there again, right, the tool setting, which is there. Going back, right, so let's go back. Sometimes you're lost, right? So don't forget, you can always use the home screen if it's available, or the home button, which will bring you back to the home screen. In some cases it disappears, like currently, but let's leave it for now. Then we've got the sensor data, which is also one which we didn't discuss yet. It allows you to enable the Connects radar. Based on the manual, I do think that the weather radar needs to be enabled prior to really departure, right? Which means if you're on the runway, I would say before that you need to switch it off. We will have a look at that in the future video on how to use those things. So we discussed now the show map and the map settings. The other options, like deleting the flight plan, not really interesting. Added data field could be interesting, but renaming, I didn't find a good reason to rename it. So let's continue with the weight and view, because that's the next option which we need to configure. And I first need to warn you, because the basic empty weight of the TBM 930 is incorrect in the Garmin G3000. So you need to adjust it, because else you will be completely overweight each time according to the Garmin. So you press set empty weight and then set it to 4725 lb, which is the correct setting. You only need to do it once because it will remember it. And once you've done that, you can add the crew and the stores, right? How much weight are they, I would say, consuming, because it's used to calculate the takeoff weight. And then we go to the payload, and in the payload you can add the passengers. You can add the weight per passenger. So in this case I add 2 passengers. I can set press enter, then the weight each is 150. And you can add also cargo, depending if they've got cargo with them, yes or no, which is easy. Now there's another way. If you go to the EFB, go to the aircraft, and then you go back and then go to the flight performance. You can also see the mass and balance option, and there you can also configure these settings and then press the load aircraft. If you would do that, then it will automatically load the aircraft and you can use those values to be put into this system. So it depends on what you prefer, but there are multiple ways in this case. Then the takeoff, right, the fuel on board, you can press FOB sync, which stands for fuel on board sync, which will look at the current fuel on board and will automatically populate this value. So really easy. You can also edit it manually if you press that specific icon, but I always recommend you to use FOB sync. So it shows now the total aircraft weight, which is a 0 fuel weight plus the fuel on board. And then we can continue with the landing. How much fuel reserves do we want to have? Well, in this case, 5 gals. And then the holding time, if we know the holding time, but not. And once we've done that, we can see that there are now green check marks, and I can press accept initialization. Now the installation has been completed. There of course are a lot of more options, as you can see in the multifunctional display. Right, so there's the map, there's also the traffic settings, right? Let's look at the traffic settings first. The traffic settings allows you to go into this screen, which is, if you split it, there you've got now 2 screens of the same size. But it will show you the traffic around you. You've got the weather data. Keep in mind that the weather radar is off by default, and you need to enable it before taking off. If you press the option again, you can go to the weather settings, which contains the connect settings. Hard to say, so you can define the coverage, you can change the destination, but you can see it's pretty limited on what you can configure here. Same thing is, I would say, if you go to the WX radar, it currently is switched to off, as you can see, but if you would press the icon now again, you can, I'd say, change some other settings. I do recommend to follow the manual and simply leave it off for now and enable it once you go airborne. I will show that in a future video on how to do that, so we'll switch back to connect settings for now. Then we've got the traffic avoidance system. This is not really a map, but it allows you to enable the traffic avoidance system. And you can see that some of those menus are, let's say, appearing into multiple parts of the aircraft, superior trading. And then on the second row, we find everything related to flight planning. So you can see the flight plan, you can see the direct to, which allows you to direct fly to a certain point in your flight plan. So if you press that option, you can simply select the next waypoint. Sometimes it's very useful to use it. I'm not using it currently, but it could be there are some valid reasons why you want to use it. And then we've got the proc, which shows you the procedures, right? We defined the arrival and approach already. And you can also activate the approach directly from here if you want to do that. Currently it's not needed. And then the charts, for some reason the charts it shows as not available, even if you press the sync POV. I'm not sure if this is normal. You can see you can change other settings, but other than that, I didn't find this one very useful. But maybe it will be fixed in the future, I'm not sure, but maybe it's me. Then on the third row, we've got also a lot of interesting things. The first one is the aircraft systems, which contains some duplicate information like the fuel. But in this case, the fuel contains some more details. As you can see, it shows you, okay, how much fuel is left in both tanks. It shows you the tank selector, if it's switched to manual or auto, or if the engines are running, yes or no, if some other things are running, yes or no. And it shows you the remaining fuel, etc. Then if you go to the power consumption, you can see the battery information, as well as the yellow markers, which doesn't mean it's very good. But it also shows you the other power sources. Now we've got a general, which shows you the aircraft itself. And then we've got the landing option, which allows you to set the landing field elevation. By default, it's set to FMS, but you can also change it to manual, which will automatically figure out if there's any elevation required for the airport. Weather view, as already discussed, contains this option, right? So I'm not going to go into it deeper now because I do think we discussed in detail enough. And then we've got the lights where you can control the global lighting. As you can see, you can change the brightness inside the cockpit. So pretty nice options in the aircraft. But I would say there's more, right? There's the utilities. Inside the utilities, you will find, again, a lot of options which we already discussed, such as the await and view, but also the minimum bar settings, which we programmed as part of our flight plan. And here we got the charts again, right? And that's why I say home is sometimes your friend, because home will bring you back to home. But in this case, I'm pressing back twice. You've got the timer settings to configure the stopwatch. You got the GPS status. This one brings up a new screen. I'm gonna move it around. Here we can see the satellites being using, also the satellite signals and some status information about the satellite, the GPS 1 and GPS 2, the difference and the SBAS status. So pretty nice options are now shown in this screen. Initialization, we already went to that one. Don't press the reset one because then you can start from scratch. And then we've got the setup button, and the setup button contains a few nice things. First of all, it contains the avionics settings, which are the, let's say, kind of the general settings for the Garmin G3000. You can change the time format, you can change the keyboard, you can change the single director or the flight director active format, you can change the units, the alerts, etc. So you can customize this to your preferences. The nice thing about this one is the MFD fields, and now you might ask, why is this interesting? Well, remember that we discussed that nice bar on the top. That is configurable because you can change these values, right? This is the bar which I am referring to. So I can press this option and then I can say, hey, I want to have the task. And then you can see that the value directly has changed. So pretty nice one. I can set it back to the default, which is the LDG. But if you prefer to have a different value there, you know that you can do it. And then we've got audio, which is set to female, and you can also set to male, which is the voice which is used to, I would say, tell you if things are wrong. For example, if it completed the initial flight check. Now, for those who are having the Navigraph subscription, you can also use Navigraph. You can switch on the procedures in Airways if you want, and you also need to make sure that you've got Symlink configured. Those are the prerequisites. And of course, you need to configure the account in the account section, but I'm not going to show it, of course, for now. This is the account section. No. So pretty interesting options in this Garmin G3000, right? A lot of options, which you all say are simply crazy. Now we looked at the main systems and a lot of systems. Let's try to move it back to the original state, right? We're going to press home. There we can still see the cast messages, but we want to see that map over there. And to do that, we're going to press the map, which shows us the map again, which allows us to, say, navigate the aircraft easily. So we looked at a lot of things, right? So let's look at something special. So now it's time for the here's a nice to know fact. When Garmin designed these touchscreens, they knew that pilots would be using them in turbulence. That's why there's a physical shelf or latch around the screen. It's designed so you can rest your hand and stabilize your fingers, making sure you don't actually tap the wrong button when the air gets bumpy. It's a tiny detail that makes a massive difference in safety. And with this, we are at the end of this video, right? The Garmin G3000 is incredible, but it's just a computer until you add some fire, because we needed to add some fire, right? We needed to add the battery power before we can master the interface. We did have a look at a lot of those pages. We looked at the primary flight display, and we looked at all those settings which you can configure. We looked at the MFD, the multifunctional display, and at the GTC 580, which is the controllers, those two control screens on the bottom, which you can use to kind of control the primary flight display, but also the MFD as well as the, I would say, aircraft in some cases. So a lot of options, and I can imagine that your head might be spinning around because it's so much information. I know. But don't worry, I also went through this whole journey and I also learned it, and it is a pretty fun journey, to be honest. So with that, again, we're at the end of this video. Join me in the next video because we're going to walk through the full engine startup sequence, manage the ITT, and get this 850 horsepower turbine spinning. And of course, we're gonna taxi and then gonna take off to take it out for a short flight. Don't forget to download the official TBM manual via the link in the description of this video, because I do think that it contains a lot of interesting information for you. And I hope to see you back next time.